Greetings, Administrator. This video is for the players who frequently make a bunch of common optimization mistakes and want to try to make their own factory. If all you're looking to do is copy-paste a blueprint for maximum efficiency base, pass your way, this video is not for you. I want to go over these mistakes because a bunch of people do want to come up with their own factory, but still have questions about how some systems function, so let's go right into the thick of it. The first common mistake is to just want to have a maximum storage of everything and not really thinking too much about how much your facilities are producing or what you need, and just going in all directions, which is kind of expected when you get started. So this setup is pretty close to what some people who are just getting started might do. There are a few other issues there. The first thing you need to consider are the conveyor belts themselves. You need to absolutely keep in mind at all time, because this will be useful all the way from the start to the very end. Conveyor belts can only transport 30 items per minute, or 1 item every 2 seconds. This is pretty relevant because a lot of basic facilities will do just that. For example, this takes 1 origin ore and outputs 1 origo crust every 2 seconds. So in that case, just 1 conveyor belt going in and out is enough for you to be producing origo crust. But there's a bit of an issue there, which is that we are also using origo crust here, and we are shredding it. See, for example, origo crust powder is something which is going to be used for one recipe early on, and then won't be used for a very long time, but it has no practical use for any other setup. So anytime you have a facility, you should ask yourself, am I actually storing a bunch of that stuff for any actual useful purpose? If the answer is no, then go ahead and just delete it. The same can be applied to the origin powder to some extent. Origin powder, for example, most certainly is a product that will be used a lot, but never on its own. It will always be used in other facilities. So feel free to go ahead and just clean up. Origo crust, however, can be used in fact for various constructions. Especially early on, if you take a look at a basic mining rig, it's going to be using some origo crust. So having a storage of some products can be interesting, but for the most part, you can just take a look at a different recipe and realize that very often these same items are going to come back again and again. Origo crust, or various ferrium parts, steel parts, amethyst parts, and that's pretty much it. The second mistake has to do a lot with ratios. Fairly early on, you'll be asked to make a battery setup, but very often it will end up looking something like this, where you have some of these on top of the facility. It's not going to feel very efficient, and you probably run into some efficiency issues the first time around when you actually made a battery, or maybe you made one and you still don't understand why exactly it's not working. Well, the Z's indicate that the facility is currently sleeping because it simply doesn't have anything to do, it doesn't have any kind of input. We're not producing enough batteries because simply there are not enough items that are entering in. And in fact, if you take a look at the 2 conveyor belts, you can see that this is stopping because there is not enough origin powder coming in. So how do we know whether we have enough or not? Well, if you click on the facility, you can take a look at the current production formula. If there is none shown here, you can click on the list, and you can see that the SC Valley battery production, for example, takes 10 ferrium parts and 15 origin powder. Remember what I said on the area just before, that a conveyor belt can transport 1 item every 2 seconds. But we need 10 ferrium parts per 10 seconds, 1 per second. That's a bit of a problem. That means we need 2 conveyor belts, bringing in ferrous parts, and 3 for original powder. So our setup has the right materials, but not in enough quantities. So we need to fix this part first. Let's go ahead and just move this a little bit. Luckily, since all we need to do is just multiply our current income of ferrous parts, we can just duplicate this and send it this way. For this, I guess we can just add 2 depot and loader here, and let's go ahead and do just that. Then bring in the conveyor belts. And that's it. If you've done your job properly, a single battery facility will be able to provide energy to 4 thermal banks. So let's just accelerate things a little bit and see if it's actually the case. And with this, our battery facility is currently providing full uptime of energy on all 4 thermal banks. So each of them is going to be providing 420 power to our entire facility, times 4. So if your battery facility cannot sustain 4 thermal banks, it probably means that you messed up something somewhere, either in the production or the influx. But there is another section to this area, and that's another one which is a mistake that's pretty commonly made, which is to not just chain your facilities together. While it can make some sense in some situations, in this particular scenario, it makes very little sense to just have the shredder facility being separate from the rest. All it does is just use a depot and loader for some originals that send it to a shredding unit and then send back into protocol storage. Realistically, we just don't need all of this. You want to use the depot unloaders for basic products as much as possible, because if you need to use it for advanced ones, you may just be wasting some additional outputs. Technically speaking, you should have enough for maxed out facility, but until you get there, you really need to learn how to manage your depot unloaders as to avoid a lot of sprawling. So let's go ahead and just delete this. And we'll not need another area, so we can just delete all these parts. Next up, we want to change all these to provide original ore. And then add our shredding units directly instead. Don't forget to provide energy for the entire thing. Finish connecting. And that is it. You will not need to transport anything else from another area into your packaging unit to make it function. The next area is going to cover 2 topics. The first one is that ratios do not apply just to batteries alone, but to a lot more facilities, and how it also ties into infinite loops for the production of some products. So, the first thing we need to do is just take a look at this facility. It's currently sleeping because it doesn't have enough material, so let's have a look at which ones. Okay, it appears to have a lot of bug flower powder, but it's running out of amethyst bottles. Very well, we can just go ahead and see what exactly is going on. To make an amethyst bottle, you need 2 amethyst fibers, which require a refining unit. Okay, so this melting unit just needs another amethyst fiber as an input. I told you. Keeping in mind that a conveyor belt can provide 1 item every 2 seconds is going to come in handy very often. So this one is an easy fix. We can just copy this setup and then connect this into the molding unit. Now that we fixed one side, we also need to consider whether we have broken the other side or not. Let's see. Well, we need just one bug flower powder every 2 seconds, and this should be providing enough. That looks okay, except it's not. See, this is not a proper loop for bug flower. While it might look so because the belt is currently congested, if you click on the planting unit, you'll notice that the bug flower powder, or at least the bug flower seed, is only going to produce one plant, but you have 2 conveyor belts going out of it, which means in an ideal situation, this is only going to send half as much to each conveyor belt, which makes sense. After all, you still have the same amount of products being produced, but they're being divided into 2 different belts instead of just one. So our setup is not good enough. This is working at 50% efficiency. So we need to have a fix in the long term, because if I just remove all the bug flower, very quickly we'll realize that it's not going to be working anymore. So let me just remove some of the plants there. The distance between 2 packs of bug flower powders here, of bug flowers, is just too large. So we messed up something. The solution is actually in the seeding unit. The seed picking unit can pick 1 bug flower, but provide us with 2 seeds. So the answer is actually in making sure that the seed picking unit provides seeds to 2 planting units. This is something that you could have messed up or missed if you didn't take a look at the tutorial, or maybe you clicked a little too fast. So let's fix this for a moment. I'm just going to go ahead and delete everything, and we'll make a problem. So we'll need the planting unit that goes this way, and then we'll need the seeding unit that's going to provide seeds for both this planting unit and the top, but we also need another planting unit that will feed back into the seed picking unit. So let's start from the seed picking unit. The seeds will go into both planting units. Then one planting unit will provide its plants back to the seed picking unit, and the last one can just you can just send it to do whatever you want. So in that case, we just want to produce some bug flower powder, so I'm going to feed it back in. Don't forget to power it up. And to start the facility, you can either put some seeds directly in the planting unit, but probably don't have these. Instead, you can go to the seed picking unit, go to depot, pick the plants, and look for bug flower. You place it, and ta-ta! It will provide the seeds for both planting units at the same time. And this time you can see the planting unit is going to provide all these at a rate which is going to completely fill the conveyor belt. So now we don't have to worry about how to fill this anymore. With this, our filling unit is going to work 24/7. However, there is still a mistake that has been made, and it's pretty difficult to spot. I'm going to give you a clue. It has to do with the shredder. The shredder can produce 2 units of bug flower powder per cycle. So right now, you'll see this icon on top of the shredder that tells you that this is often clogged. It is clogged because it produces 2 units, but it can only get rid of 1 unit at a time through the conveyor belt. What this means is that this could actually have a second conveyor belt going out of it and providing us even more bug flower powder so that we can actually have another filling unit working. So how do we go about it? Okay, it's a bit more complicated. I definitely recommend you to make use of the bulk action to make things simpler. So let's just grab all this, and we're going to move it slightly to the side because we are going to duplicate the setup that we have here. For now, get rid of this, and we need another one like this. So let's go ahead and grab this, 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 and this. Oops. Okay. Now we have a unit that needs to have some to be connected back. So it will go 24/7. I can pick this and set it to the other filling unit. And then we just need a little bit of power. Now I can just connect the filling unit back, either use a converter or just don't bother and just go for this. And finally, we have a 100% efficiency setup available. There's one last bit that can be very interesting, and this also has to do with the outpost. In the outpost, you'll be required to make a bunch of products. And if you take a look at the bug capsules and the Citrom, you can see that there are actually a few letters. So can Citrom C is actually the lowest rarity. It's the simplest Citrom that you can make. Then B will require a bit more complexity, and then A is the most complex. For bug capsules, it's the same thing, although bug capsule C is not actually required by this outpost. It's only required by this first outpost, so you might be better off just making something Citrom C. Now the good news about it is that if we actually go back to the setup we just made, it's very easy to just switch the entire thing around. See, I could just make the same setup, but instead of doing this, let me just make a quick copy and delete the existing setup. And then we're going to put this back here. See, the difference between a bug capsule C and a Citrom C is just the plant that's being used. So really, all we need to do is just go there to the plants, and instead of picking bug flower, I can just add some Citrom. And now this will indefinitely produce some Citrom, and I just need to make sure that everything else is cleared. So let me just delete the shredder. I will reconstruct it. And same goes for the two filling units. Alright. And after just a little bit, and there we have it. We have converted our bug capsule C facility into a Citrom C facility. Here we have a crystal component setup. The entire setup is used to make crystal components, which is then used for gear. And this one is something you're probably not aware, because unless you've been going through several components, you won't necessarily realize it. But it comes back to the first point that I made on the very first area. Remember what I said about making at least products that you only actually need? Components are only used for gearing and nothing else. If you actually click on it, you have the facility, but it doesn't give you any product. If I click, for example, on the grinding unit, and then I click on the crystal powder, it will tell you the main product is this crystal thing here. If you click on an item and you see that there is no main products, this is the end of the line and you can't do anything else with it. Since crystal components are only used for gear, once you have equipped all of the necessary operators or you have unlocked the next tier of components, there just isn't much value in making components again. So you have one of two possibilities. You could delete the entire thing, but if you ever need to use the ability later again, you can just decide to turn everything off. We now have a shortcut available that allows us to select a bunch of buildings and just turn them off. That way, they will stop using energy, because a setup like this does use quite a bit of power. If you take a look at the energy at the top, I have 3.41, but if I turn everything back on, it's using about 220 power, which is not that much at the point where I am, but if you are earlier in the game, then saving up on power and not having a bunch of unnecessary facilities can make your life a lot easier. And as mentioned before, if you already have all the components that you make, or all the components that you need, don't be afraid to just delete the entire thing. This last part has to do with space optimization. Now, a fully maxed out factory in Valley 4 will usually have a 3HC battery setups, so something pretty similar to this if you want to reach the maximum efficiency possible, as well as 3 bug capsule A or 3 Citroen A. A setup like this can perfectly fit into any of the sub-packs, for example, but you have to take into account that for the main pack, we only have 9 bus loaders, meaning that if I try to just copy the entire thing and paste it here, I don't have enough room and I can't move my current setup further to the right. So that's a clear case of issue with space optimization, because then I can't comfortably just copy paste somewhere else. This is the setup I use for my actual PAC, which only has 4 Ferrium nodes and 6 Originium ore incoming. As much as possible, my recommendation would be, if you are going to rely on some infinite loop of seed bus planting combo, make sure to integrate it into the rest of the facility as well, so that you don't have to rely on additional depot bus unloaders to fill in the needs of your facilities. If we come back to the setup that has the issue that it can't be just copy-pasted everywhere, you can see the sunflowers here are taking quite a bit of space. In fact, if I could just get rid of one and just shift the entire facility to the right, I could then copy-paste things pretty conveniently. So instead of having a setup like this, where there is a lot of dead space, try and see if you cannot optimize things a little bit. Obviously, some things will require tweaking, and I'm not going to say that this is going to be a final solution, just to mention that we can make something better here. So I'm going to add the shredding unit for the sunflowers here. I'm gonna copy paste an existing setup. The right way around would be even better. And then we are going to send it back to the shredder. Pour the thing. Don't forget to add in the sunflower. Now, if I try and see if I have enough space at the top, there it is, and I can finally copy the facility. This part is really about being able to plan in advance what you want to do in the future. So don't waste unnecessarily some depot bus unloaders unless you actually need them in the first place. Space optimization is not something you should focus on right as you build your entire setup, because simply put, you don't know how many facilities you'll need in the first place. It turns out that when a packaging unit, an HC battery, needs 5 grinding units and all the corresponding shredders and refining units, it's pretty difficult to plan things in advance. So nothing is stopping you from just actually placing the buildings and then caring about optimization. Like, this is going down a bit too much maybe to my liking, so maybe I might want to pick this and move it somewhere else. Maybe I'd rather have it here instead. And then I just direct this like this, leaving some room below the entire blueprint. You have all the tools necessary to optimize your base to almost its fullest. There are still some topics to cover, but all that you've seen today can be applied to craft even HC valid batteries, bug capsule A or Citroen A or any kind of facility in Valley 4. Next up, I'll be talking about load balancing, which is an entirely different topic, still related to the factory, but that's a subject for another video. I'll see you around, Administrator.